The darkness of space had never felt so cold to Captain Jake Morrison as he stared at the sensor readings on his screen. His defense station orbited the edge of human territory, a lonely outpost that most people back on Earth had forgotten existed. The metal corridors around him hummed with the quiet sounds of machines keeping him and his small crew alive in the void between stars. Jake had been watching empty space for 3 years now. Every day brought the same routine of checking sensors, running diagnostics, and sending reports back to Earth that nobody really read. His crew of 12 people had grown used to the peaceful silence that surrounded their station. Lieutenant Amy Carter worked at her communications console, monitoring frequencies that carried nothing but cosmic background noise. Sergeant Bill Murphy maintained the defense systems that had never fired a shot in anger. Chief Engineer Nancy Green kept their reactor running smooth and steady, powering systems that seemed to have no real purpose. That morning started like any other morning. Jake drank his coffee and read the overnight reports. Amy checked her communication arrays for messages from home. Bill ran his daily weapons diagnostics, even though he knew the guns would work perfectly. Nancy adjusted power flows that needed no adjustment. The routine had become so normal that none of them expected it to ever change. Then the sensors started screaming. Amy looked up from her console with confusion written across her face. The displays showed readings that made no sense. Ships were appearing at the edge of sensor range, but they were unlike anything in the human database. These vessels did not look like they had been built in any shipyard that humans knew about. Instead of clean metal hulls and geometric shapes, these ships seemed to pulse and writhe like living creatures. Jake moved to the main display and watched as more contacts appeared on screen. The first ship was massive, easily 10 times larger than the biggest human vessel ever constructed. Its hull seemed to breathe and shift, covered in what looked like organic tissue rather than armor plating. Strange growths extended from its sides like wings or tentacles, and the whole structure glowed with a sickly green light that hurt to look at directly. More ships followed the first, one through whatever method they used to travel between stars. Each vessel was different from the others, but all shared the same disturbing organic appearance. Some looked like enormous insects with multiple segments and clicking appendages. Others resembled deep-sea creatures with flowing membranes and bioluminescent patterns. A few appeared to be nothing more than massive chunks of living tissue held together by unknown forces. Amy worked frantically at her communication station, trying to establish contact with the alien fleet. She broadcast on every frequency humans had ever used, sending mathematical sequences and basic pictographs that should be understandable to any intelligent species. The response was complete silence. The alien ships continued their approach without acknowledging human attempts at communication. Jake felt his hands shake as he reached for the emergency transmitter. This device connected directly to Earth Command through a quantum communication link that could not be jammed or intercepted. His voice was steady despite the fear growing in his chest as he spoke into the microphone. The alien fleet had grown to over 50 ships of various sizes, all moving in perfect coordination toward the inner human colonies. Their formation was too precise to be anything but military, and their silence in response to communication attempts suggested hostile intent. Jake had read enough history to know that first contact situations could go wrong in terrible ways. On Earth, the politicians and scientists who received Jake's transmission found it hard to believe. Humanity had been alone in the galaxy for so long that many people had stopped expecting to ever meet other intelligent life. The idea that aliens would arrive without warning and ignore all attempts at peaceful contact seemed impossible to accept. Admiral Vexthara commanded the Korthax invasion fleet from her position deep within the flagship's living control center. Her species had perfected the art of conquest over 300 years of expansion through the galaxy. The bioships that carried her warriors were grown rather than built. Their living hulls capable of adapting to any threat and healing from almost any damage. The Corax had consumed 43 different civilizations during their expansion, adding the biological essence of each conquered species to their own technology. Every ship in the fleet contained genetic material from dozens of different alien races, all merged together into weapons of incredible power and efficiency. These humans represented nothing special to Vexthara. Her scouts had observed their primitive colonies and measured their basic technology. The species showed signs of intelligence and tool use, but they had barely begun to explore space beyond their home system. Their weapons were crude chemical rockets and simple energy beams that would be useless against Korthak's bioarmor. Their ships were slow and clumsy compared to the living vessels of the Empire. The planet they called Earth looked particularly RICH in biological diversity. The Korthaks could harvest its entire biosphere to feed their ships and create new warriors for future conquests. The human population would provide excellent genetic material for incorporation into the Empire's biological weapons. It would be a simple matter to overwhelm their defenses and begin the harvesting process. Vexthara had no way of knowing that humanity was different from every other species the Korthaks had encountered. The previous civilizations had fought defensive wars, trying to protect their homes and families from conquest. They had sought to preserve their cultures and ways of life even in defeat. When faced with extinction, they had accepted their fate with dignity and grace. Humans were not like other species. When pushed beyond their limits, when faced with complete destruction, humans did not seek to preserve anything. They sought to destroy everything that threatened them, even if it meant burning down the entire galaxy in the process. The Korthaks bioships crossed the invisible line that marked the boundary of human territory, moving toward the outer colonies with predatory grace. Their hulls pulsed with anticipation of the feast to come. The harvest would begin soon, and another species would be added to the Empire's collection of conquered genetics. But they had made a mistake that would cost them everything. They had entered human space without permission. They had ignored human attempts at communication. They had come as conquerors rather than visitors. They had crossed the line into human territory, and they were about to discover what nightmare they had awakened. The colony of New Eden had been humanity's pride for 20 years. Built on a world with perfect weather and rich soil, it housed 3 million people who had left Earth to build new lives among the stars. Children played in parks while there. Parents worked in laboratories and factories. Farmers grew crops under alien suns while artists created beautiful works inspired by double sunsets and purple skies. Colony Administrator Carol Davis was reviewing crop reports when the first Korthak's bioship appeared in orbit above her world. The massive organic vessel blocked out the sun as it positioned itself over the capital city. Carol tried to contact the ship using every communication method available, but received no response except an ominous silence that made her skin crawl. The attack began without warning. Streams of green liquid poured from the alien ship like acid rain, covering buildings and streets in a substance that dissolved everything it touched. People screamed and ran for shelter, but there was nowhere to hide from the biological weapon that fell from the sky. The liquid did not just destroy structures and vehicles. It consumed them, breaking down metal and concrete into organic matter that the ship above absorbed through massive feeding tubes. Dr. Martin Price worked in the colony's main hospital when the first victims arrived. The green substance had touched dozens of people during their desperate flight to safety. Those who had been splashed with even small amounts of the alien weapon showed signs of rapid cellular breakdown. Their skin began to dissolve while they remained conscious and aware of what was happening to them. Martin had never seen anything so horrific in his years of medical practice. The Korthaks Ground forces arrived in smaller bioships that landed like giant insects throughout the colony. These warriors were not wearing armor or carrying weapons in any human sense. Instead, they had grown their protection and armaments as part of their own bodies. Their skin was thick and chitinous like beetle shells, and their arms ended in appendages that could fire the same green liquid that had rained from orbit. Security Chief Tom Walker organized the colony's defense forces, but their weapons proved almost useless against the alien invaders. Bullets bounced off Korthak's bio-armor without leaving marks. Energy beams that could cut through steel barely scratched their living protection. Even explosives seemed to cause only temporary damage that healed within minutes. The aliens moved through the colony with methodical efficiency, herding human survivors into collection areas where larger bioorganisms waited to process them. These creatures looked like massive flowers with rows of sharp teeth lining their petals. Humans who were forced into contact with these organisms did not die quickly. Instead, they were slowly dissolved while still alive, their biological essence extracted and stored in organic containers for transport back to the ships. Carol Davis managed to reach the colony's emergency communications center before the aliens overran her position. She sent desperate messages to Earth and other human colonies, describing the attack and warning them about the Korthak's methods of warfare. Her final transmission was cut short when a bio-warrior found her hiding place, but her words had already traveled across space to reach human leaders. On Earth, President Helen Walsh watched the horrific footage from New Eden in the emergency bunker deep beneath the Pentagon. The images showed her people being dissolved alive by creatures that seemed to come from humanity's worst nightmares. General Robert Hayes stood beside her, his weathered face grim as he processed the scale of the threat facing human civilization. The military situation was desperate. Humanity had built its space forces to deal with pirates and rebels, not alien invaders with biological weapons that could consume entire worlds. The few warships available were designed for conventional combat using kinetic weapons and energy, beams that had proven ineffective against Korthak's bio-armor. Commander Lisa Thompson volunteered to lead the first human fleet to confront the Korthaks directly. Her 12 ships represented the largest force Earth could assemble on short notice, equipped with humanity's most advanced weapons and shields. She knew the odds were against her, but someone had to try to stop the aliens before they reached Earth itself. The battle took place in the asteroid belt between New Eden and the next human colony. Lisa's ships engaged the Korthak's biovessels in what military historians would later call the most one-sided defeat in human history. The alien ships adapted to human weapons in real time, their living hulls developing resistance to energy beams and growing thicker armor to stop kinetic projectiles. Lisa watched in horror as her weapons became less effective with each shot fired. The Korthak's bioships learned from every attack, modifying their defenses to counter human tactics. When her flagship's main gun scored a direct hit on an enemy vessel, the damage healed within minutes as the living hull regrew the destroyed sections. The human fleet was destroyed in less than an hour. Lisa's final message to Earth described ships that could think and adapt like living creatures. She reported that the aliens were not just killing humans, but harvesting their bodies for some unknown purpose. Her transmission ended when her ship was consumed by a Korthak's biovessel that enveloped the human craft like a giant mouth. Dr. Richard Stone worked frantically in his laboratory on Luna Base, studying the few samples of Korthak's biomaterial that had been recovered from the battle. What he discovered filled him with a horror deeper than anything he had felt during the attack footage. The alien technology was not just biological. It was a fusion of countless different species that had been consumed and incorporated into a single organism. Each Korthak's bioship contained genetic material from dozens of different alien races. The weapons, armor, and even the hull plating were grown from the biological essence of civilizations that no longer existed. The Corax had not just conquered other species, they had absorbed them completely, using their victims' own biology. As tools for further conquest, Richard realized that humanity was facing something more terrible than simple alien invaders. The Corax were a plague that consumed entire civilizations, leaving nothing behind except the biological components needed to build more ships and weapons. If they succeeded in conquering humanity, every human who had ever lived would become part of their organic war machine. But Richard also discovered something else in his analysis of the alien samples. The Corax biotechnology showed signs of structure and organization that suggested a hive mind controlling the entire species. If that central intelligence could be located and destroyed, the entire invasion force might collapse. It was a slim hope, but it was the only weakness he could find in an otherwise perfect biological weapon. The news of New Eden's destruction spread across human space like wildfire, carried by quantum communication arrays that connected every human world. On Mars, factory workers stopped their machines and stared at screens showing the dissolved remains of what had been their sister colony. In the asteroid mining stations, crews gathered around communication terminals to watch footage of people being consumed alive by alien creatures. On every human world, in every space station, the reaction was the same stunned silence, followed by something much more dangerous. Colonel Peter Mills had been waiting for this moment his entire military career. Deep beneath the Colorado mountains, he walked through corridors that most humans did not know existed. Protocol Omega had been humanity's deepest secret for 50 years, a plan developed by military leaders who understood that first contact might not be peaceful. While politicians had prepared for diplomatic meetings with alien visitors, the soldiers had prepared for alien war. Peter's hand trembled slightly as he inserted his authorization code into the control panel. Around him, dozens of military officers did the same at terminals throughout the underground complex. Each person had been chosen for their ability to make hard decisions when faced with impossible situations. Each had sworn an oath to protect humanity no matter what the cost might be. The authorization codes triggered systems that had been hidden across human space for decades. On distant worlds, mountains opened to reveal weapon platforms that could destroy entire fleets. In asteroid fields, rocks split apart to show massive guns disguised as mining equipment. Near every human colony, stealth ships that had waited in dark orbit for 50 years suddenly came online and began moving toward their assigned positions. Captain Susan Wright piloted the first reconnaissance ship deep into what had been new, Eden's system. Her vessel was invisible to most sensors, built using technology that humanity had developed in absolute secrecy. The stealth systems required so much power that the ship could barely move faster than a normal freighter, but it could pass within a few thousand kilometers of enemy vessels without being detected. What Susan found in the new Eden system made her stomach turn with revulsion and fear. The Corax had not simply destroyed the human colony and moved on to their next target. Instead, they had built something around the system's star that defied all human understanding of engineering and physics. The structure was vast beyond imagination. A ring of organic material that completely encircled the star at a distance closer than Mercury orbited Earth's sun. Massive feeding tubes extended from the ring toward the nuclear furnace, somehow extracting energy directly from the stellar core without being destroyed by the incredible heat and radiation. The entire construction pulsed with the same sickly green light that had characterized Corax bio-ships. Thousands of new biovessels were being grown along the inner surface of the ring, each one larger and more complex than the ships that had attacked New Eden. Susan watched through her ship's sensors as freshly created Corax warriors emerged from organic birthing chambers, their bodies already equipped with weapons and armor that incorporated genetic material from dozens of conquered species. The scale of the operation was terrifying. The Corax were not just conquering human space. They were transforming it into a massive factory for producing more bioships and warriors. At the current rate of construction, they could build enough vessels to overwhelm every human defense within a matter of months. Susan transmitted her findings back to Earth using quantum communication methods that the Corax could not intercept. Her report reached military headquarters at the same time that similar intelligence arrived from other reconnaissance missions. The enemy was not just powerful. They were growing stronger with every passing day. Dr. Angela Torres worked frantically in her research facility on Mars, analyzing data from the stealth ship missions while trying to find some weakness in Corax. Biotechnology. Her team had been studying alien biology since the first samples arrived from Luna Base, but the complexity of the organisms seemed to defy every attempt at understanding. The breakthrough came when Angela examined brain wave patterns from human survivors who had been exposed to Corax bioweapons, but had somehow escaped before being completely dissolved. The electromagnetic signatures produced by human neural activity created interference patterns in the alien biotechnology that caused temporary disruptions in their function. Angela realized that human consciousness itself might be the key to defeating the Corax. Every other species the aliens had conquered must have had different neural patterns that did not interfere with bioorganic systems. Humans were unique in producing brain waves that could disrupt the quantum processes that held Corax bioships together. The discovery led to rapid development of neural amplifiers that could boost human brainwave output to levels that would cause massive disruption in Corax biosystems. Soldiers equipped with these devices could walk through alien bioarmor as if it were made of paper. Ships with neural broadcasting arrays could cause entire Corax vessels to lose structural integrity and collapse. Admiral Marcus Bell took command of humanity's military response from his position in the hidden command center beneath Luna's surface. The moon had been hollowed out over 50 years to create the largest military installation ever built by human hands. Weapons factories worked around the clock to produce neural disruptors, while shipyards that had been disguised as mining operations began assembling the warships that would carry humanity's counterattack to the enemy. Marcus had studied every military conflict in human history, from ancient battles fought with swords and spears to modern engagements using energy weapons and guided missiles. He understood that wars were won not just by superior technology, but by superior will to use that technology without mercy or restraint. The Corax had made a fundamental error in their assessment of human nature. They had studied human technology and found it primitive. They had observed human military forces and judged them weak. They had watched human society and seen a species that valued individual life above collective survival. But they had never seen humans pushed beyond their breaking point. They had never witnessed what happened when a species that had evolved as persistence hunters decided that another species needed to be completely eliminated from existence. They had crossed the line into human territory, expecting to find another civilization that would surrender when faced with overwhelming force. Instead, they had awakened something that their hive mind could not understand or predict. They had awakened the human capacity for total war, and now they were about to discover what that truly meant. Admiral Marcus Bell stood before the massive holographic display that showed every Corax position across 17 star systems. His gray hair had turned completely white during the 3 months since New Eden fell, but his eyes burned with a cold fury that made even his veteran officers uncomfortable to be near. The time for defense had ended, and now humanity would show these aliens what they had truly awakened. The counteroffensive began at exactly 800 Earth Standard Time across all target systems simultaneously. Human fleets that had been hidden in dark space for decades suddenly appeared around Korthak's bioships like ghosts materializing from the void. The aliens had grown used to easy victories against species that fought predictable defensive wars. But humans had spent their entire history perfecting the art of coordinated surprise attacks. Captain Danny Rivera commanded the lead assault ship as it emerged from stealth directly behind a massive Korthak's bio vessel that was feeding on a captured asteroid. His ship's neural disruptor arrays activated at point-blank range, sending waves of amplified human brain patterns through the alien craft's living hull. The effect was immediate and devastating as the bioship's organic systems began to tear themselves apart at the molecular level. The Korthak's vessel tried to turn its weapons toward Danny's ship, but its targeting systems had been disrupted by the neural interference. Massive biocannons that could have vaporized a human cruiser fired wildly into empty space while the alien crew struggled to understand what was happening to their technology. Within minutes, the bioship lost structural integrity and collapsed into a writhing mass of dying tissue. Similar scenes played out across the combat zone as human ships equipped with neural weapons tore through Korthak's fleets that had seemed invincible just hours before. The aliens had never encountered technology that could exploit the quantum processes holding their bioorganisms together. Their adaptive armor and self-healing hulls were useless against weapons that attacked the fundamental forces binding their ships together. Squad leader Tony Garcia led the first human boarding party into a crippled Korthak's bioship that had been disabled by neural disruptor fire. His Marines wore advanced armor that generated its own neural interference field, allowing them to move through alien bio corridors without triggering the defensive systems that lined the walls. The interior of the ship was like walking through the digestive system of some enormous creature, with pulsing walls that secreted acids and organic passages that tried to close around the intruders. Tony's mission was not just to destroy the alien vessel, but to extract information from its living computer systems. Human scientists had learned to interface with Korthak's biotechnology using neural amplifiers that could overwhelm the alien consciousness controlling each system. The process was dangerous because it required human operators to temporarily merge their minds with alien intelligence. But the intelligence gathered was worth the risk. The information extracted from captured bioships revealed the locations of every major Korthak's installation in the galaxy. The aliens had kept detailed records of their conquests, including star charts showing the home systems of the 43 species they had consumed over 3 centuries. More importantly, the data included the location of the Korthak's home system, where their ancient queen controlled the entire hive mind. Engineer Kelly Davis worked in the captured bioship's living engine room, carefully studying how Korthak's technology could be adapted for human use. The alien propulsion systems were based on biological processes that could bend space and time in ways that human science barely understood. By combining human neural control systems with Korthak's bioengineering, Kelly's team created hybrid drives that could move ships faster than anything either species had built before. The fusion of human and alien technology created vessels that were more powerful than anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human consciousness provided the intelligence and creativity needed to use biotechnology effectively, while Korthak's organic systems provided the raw power and adaptability that human machines could never match. The result was a new type of warship that could think, adapt, and regenerate damage while remaining under complete human control. Dr. Frank Miller led the biological warfare research team on Lunabase, working to develop weapons specifically designed to target Korthak's neural networks. Unlike previous human enemies, the aliens shared a hive mind that connected every individual across their entire species. This collective consciousness was their greatest strength because it allowed perfect coordination between all their forces. But it was also their greatest weakness, because it created a single point of failure that could destroy them all. Frank's team engineered a virus that could spread through Corthax biotechnology by mimicking the neural patterns the aliens used for internal communication. Once inside their systems, the virus would rewrite the genetic code that controlled hive mind functions, turning their greatest asset into a weapon against them. The process was similar to how human computer viruses worked, except this weapon targeted living organisms instead of electronic systems. The virus was tested on captured Corthax bioorganisms in secure laboratories deep beneath the lunar surface. The results exceeded all expectations as the alien specimens turned on each other when their hive mind connections were severed. Without the collective intelligence that had guided them for centuries, individual Corthax warriors became confused and aggressive, attacking anything nearby, including their own kind. The Corthax Empire had never experienced defeats like the ones they were suffering at human hands. Their bioships that had conquered dozens of civilizations were being destroyed by primitive humans using technology that should not have been able to harm them. Their adaptive armor that learned from every attack was useless against neural weapons that bypassed physical defenses entirely. Admiral Vexthara retreated her forces to defensive positions around major hive installations, trying to understand how these humans had become so dangerous so quickly. Her species had studied human technology and found it crude, compared to bioengineering that had been perfected over millennia. Yet somehow these primitive creatures had found ways to turn Corthax strengths into weaknesses. The humans were not fighting like any species the Corthax had encountered before. Previous civilizations had sought to preserve their populations, and cultures even in defeat, accepting surrender when resistance became hopeless. But humans seemed to have no interest in survival or preservation once they decided that their enemy needed to be destroyed. They fought with a savage intelligence that turned every Corthax advantage against them, while showing no mercy or restraint in their methods. The galaxy was about to learn that humans were not just another species to be conquered and consumed. They were something far more dangerous, and the Corthax had awakened something that would not stop until every trace of their empire had been erased from existence. The final battle for the galaxy began when Captain Danny Rivera's fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Corthax home system. Behind him followed 300 human warships, each one a hybrid of alien biotechnology and human engineering that pulsed with deadly purpose. The vessels moved through space like living predators, their organic hulls rippling with neural energy that could tear apart any Corthax defense. The system before them was unlike anything humans had ever seen. The Corthax Queen had ruled from this place for over 1,000 years, and her influence had transformed every planet and moon into part of a vast biological machine. Entire worlds had been consumed and regrown as massive organs that served different functions for the hive mind. One planet had become a giant brain that processed information from across the galaxy, while another had been transformed into a heart that pumped nutrients through living space, elevators to feed the Queen's fortress. The fortress itself defied all human understanding of scale and engineering. Built around the system's largest moon, the structure was easily the size of a small planet, its surface covered in organic towers that reached into space like the tentacles of some cosmic creature. The entire construction pulsed with the same green light that had marked all Corthax technology. But here the glow was so intense it could be seen from the edge of the star system. Admiral Vexthara prepared her final defenses from within the Queen's fortress, commanding bioships that had been grown specifically to protect the home system. These vessels were larger and more powerful than anything the Corthax had used in their invasion of human space, equipped with weapons that could consume entire fleets and armor that had been hardened against every form of attack the Empire had ever encountered. But the Corthax had never faced an enemy like humanity. Danny's ships carried neural weapons that had been refined during months of combat against alien biotechnology. More importantly, they carried Dr. Frank Miller's virus, a biological weapon that could spread through the Corthax hive mind and destroy it from within. The battle began with Danny's fleet launching waves of neural disruptor missiles that tore through the outer defenses, surrounding the Queen's fortress. Corthax bioships that tried to intercept the human vessels found their organic systems, failing as neural interference disrupted the quantum processes holding them together. Massive defensive platforms that had protected the home system for centuries collapsed into writhing masses of dying tissue. Lieutenant Commander Patricia Young led the assault force that penetrated the fortress itself, guiding her hybrid bioship through passages that shifted and changed around her like the digestive system of some enormous creature. The interior defenses tried to adapt to human neural patterns, but Patricia's ship generated interference fields that confused the alien systems and allowed her team to reach the fortress core. The Queen herself was ancient, beyond human comprehension, a creature that had grown to fill an entire chamber the size of a human city. Her body was connected to every bioship and warrior in the Corthax Empire through organic cables that pulsed with neural energy. She had been the guiding intelligence behind 3 centuries of conquest, and her consciousness contained the memories of every species the Empire had consumed. Patricia's team fought through the Queen's chamber, while biodefenders emerged from the living walls to protect their ruler. The human soldiers wore armor that generated neural fields strong enough to disrupt alien weapons before they could fire, turning the fortress defenses against themselves. But the real battle was not being fought with guns and explosives. Dr. Kevin Walsh led the virus deployment team into the Queen's neural center, where massive organic computers processed information from across the galaxy. These living machines controlled the hive mind that connected every Corthax individual, and they were the perfect target for a biological weapon designed to rewrite alien genetic code. The virus spread through the Corthax neural network faster than their biotechnology could adapt to stop it. Within minutes, the genetic instructions that had maintained the hive mind for millennia were being overwritten with human programming that turned the collective consciousness against itself. Individual Corthax warriors across the galaxy suddenly found themselves disconnected from the Yai intelligence that had guided their every action. The Queen's death scream echoed through space as her massive body began to dissolve from neural feedback caused by the collapsing hive mind. The sound was transmitted through quantum communication methods that reached every corner of the galaxy, carrying with it a warning that would be remembered by any surviving alien species for generations to come. Across the Corthax Empire, bioships suddenly turned on each other as their crews lost the collective intelligence that had kept them unified. Massive hive installations that had processed conquered species for centuries began to tear themselves apart as their organic systems received conflicting commands from the dying neural network. Within hours, an empire that had ruled for 300 years was destroying itself from within. The few Corthax individuals who survived the collapse of their hive mind were no longer the dangerous warriors who had conquered dozens of civilizations. Without the collective consciousness that had made them powerful, they became confused creatures that could barely function as individuals. Most died within days as their biotechnology failed without the neural signals needed to maintain it. Humanity had achieved something that no other species in galactic history had ever accomplished. They had not just defeated the Corthax Empire, they had completely erased it from existence. Every bioship, every hive installation, every trace of the alien civilization that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries was gone, consumed by the very technology that had made them powerful. The victory came at a cost that few humans were willing to discuss. In order to defeat an enemy that consumed other species, humanity had become something equally ruthless and merciless. The neural weapons and biological viruses they had created were tools of complete destruction that left no room for surrender or survival. Other alien species in the galaxy learned a lesson that day about the nature of humanity. These humans were not a threat because they were the strongest or the most advanced civilization in space. They were dangerous because when someone crossed the line into human territory and threatened their existence, they would respond with creativity and determination focused on a single goal: the complete annihilation of whatever had dared to threaten them. The galaxy would never underestimate humanity again, and no species would ever repeat the Corthax mistake of treating humans as easy prey. They had learned that behind the peaceful facade of human civilization lay something far more terrifying than any nightmare their worst fears could imagine.